There's so much I'd love to cover with you, but we better start in the icy waters of Alaska. What do you think is going to happen when the big men meet on the 15th of August?
No, you have to look at the what each side brings to the table there and how much leverage one has against the other. And when you do that, you see that President Trump just has very little leverage, very few cards to play, and all of the power cards are in President Putin's hands. So I saw lots of reports that, especially on Western media, that Putin was considering surrendering some of the territory that he has in the Zaporizhia and the Kherson provinces in the south, and in exchange for swapping territory, as Trump put it on Friday, by requiring the Ukrainian side to withdraw from parts of the Donbass. I guess everything is possible, but I cannot imagine that Russia would do that because they don't have to do that. And why would they hand a tremendous victory to the other side when they don't have the power to actually compel Russia to do that? What I think is probably more likely is that President Putin is going to say, hey, we're willing to engage in diplomacy and end this on the terms we've been talking about since June of 2024. And that includes all of the four territories and the withdrawal from all of them. He may do some sort of a temporary air ceasefire because that's the one thing that would benefit Russia periodically. But he definitely won't do a 30-day unconditional ceasefire because that would help Ukraine and harm Russia. They won't do that. But you have to have the capacity and the leverage to compel compliance on the other side, on the Russian side, if you want them to give away any territory that they currently have. And there's nothing on the Ukraine side that can do that, so Trump has no leverage to compel it. So what I fear may be the bigger issue is that Putin may come and say, we're going to hold to the same thing as I said in June 2014, and either you guys comply with it or we're going to continue to roll all the way up until we seize everything to the Dnieper River and possibly beyond.
Well, the Russian army gained 7 kilometers this day alone. The pace of advance is quickening markedly. The disarray in the rear of the Ukrainian side is plainly evident. Whether it's Klitschko, whether it's Zaluzhny on the front page of Vogue, they're all jockeying for Zelensky's position. The Azov, the Nazi formations, are issuing dread warnings in Parliament to Zelensky that his show is over and the rest. And the brutal way in which people are being swept off the streets and shanghaied to the front with their wives and mothers holding on to them, trying to stop it. All of that speaks to a collapsing situation in the rear and a heavy, powerful advance by the Russians at the front. So the point you make about cards, after all, it was Donald Trump who introduced that concept when he told Zelensky months ago in the Oval Office, you don't have any cards. So what cards does Donald Trump have to play?
I think Trump does have a few. He's not without any kind of leverage. He could say, listen, we want this war to be over too. We want to get back to a normalized relationship because however this war is concluded, Russia's still going to exist. Europe is still going to exist. We're still going to exist. We have to live together. We got to figure some ways out. We have the New START treaty, which is going to expire in February of this year. We need to work on that. We obviously the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty has expired already. Now Russia's saying they're no longer abiding by it. So that's not good. We need to try to put that back together somehow because we've got to look beyond this war. And Trump can say, hey, listen, we can talk about maybe releasing some sanctions and to normalize relations in exchange for there won't be much because Russia Putin himself can't just give away some of this territory here because he's already incorporated it into their constitution, and he would face a revolt at home if he actually gave that stuff away because then he would make his word no good to ethnic Russians who are banking on him doing what he wants here. So Putin himself is limited here, and Trump as well is what he can get. But I think that if you can just say, hey, let's just get the war over with so the bleeding stops, the destruction of Ukraine stops, and everybody can at least start the very difficult and painful process of recovering from all this that everybody's going to have to do so that we don't have the risk of an expanded war, which is still on the table.
What are the risks for Putin in going there? You and I both know, but it's not widely known, it's certainly not widely reported, that there are many people in Russia, some of them in the Kremlin itself, who think that Putin has treated this whole thing with far too thick velvet glove, that he should have ended it long before now and could have ended it long before now. If Putin were to make major concessions, what would the impact of those be?
Well, I mean, truly, and I've had a number of folks even on my show talk about this and some of the sources that I've pinged from the Russian side, and they say they think that this whole issue of talking to, first of all, to Witkoff last week and then to Trump here in Alaska probably is some sort of like 3D chess move by Putin, or at least they say it better be, because if what's being reported turned out to be true and he gave away territory that they have the power to not just hold on to but continue to take more, there would be a great deal of anger among many sources inside of Russia, and I can't say with any confidence that would literally turn into a revolt. But you can't dismiss that because it would make people really, really angry at Putin. And I just don't see any reason, given everything he said from before the war all the way back to 2008, and then he would suddenly change course at the last one when, as you pointed out there, the fabric of the Ukrainian army is starting to shatter. There is no reason for him to give in to anything now. So anybody who's hoping he's going to, I think it's going to be disappointed.
Well, what happens if disappointment is the result? Trump has got the European, I'm going to call them leaders in inverted commas, yapping at his heels like chihuahuas. He's got little Zelensky, less than a chihuahua. What's less than a chihuahua? A sausage dog, a Dachshund. Barking in the sidelines. Is Trump taking any risks here?
Well, listen, I think that this can best be illustrated by something in the Telegraph today. Maybe you saw it. It said that Trump betrays Ukraine. And I'll just tell you that when I read that, it actually made me angry. I was hot because what these guys doing, and this represents the elite thinking in both London and Washington and really all over Europe, is that all of this is Donald Trump's fault. Donald Trump is the bad guy. Sure, Putin's bad too, but Trump is the real bad guy because everything was set up and we were doing everything to help Ukraine win, and now he's coming, maybe going to give it away. Oblivious to the fact that we're only in this problem right now because the Western elite refused to make the diplomatic moves necessary to prevent this from starting war in the first place, going all the way back to Minsk, really going all the way back to 2014 and how we participated in the civil war that broke out in Ukraine, then the Minsk, then December 2021, and of course the famous one in Istanbul in 2022, and all the way forward. Every diplomatic off-ramp we've had, we refused. Instead, all we wanted to talk about was more war, more arms, more ammunition, and continue fighting. So we are in this process right now where Trump, who is the only one talking about ending the war, the only one in the West, he may, quote, give away something to Ukraine, to Russia, but he's not giving away anything. Russia took it because of our unwillingness to do anything that was rational and logical and could have ended the war and benefited all of us, or at least limited the damage in Ukraine, but benefited the rest of the Western world. We refused to do that, and now we're trying to blame it on Trump for conceding to reality here. And that's the big problem, is that we have that mentality that we can do anything we want. There's never any kind of consequences or results. And now that we see that that spin only works on TV, it doesn't work in reality. And now then, if we keep that mentality, we could be getting in even more trouble after this thing is resolved, however it is, because if we keep on pretending like we need to keep supporting war against Russia, now that they have won, we need to get ready for another war, then we could be setting ourselves up for literal destruction.
Now, Colonel, paint us some color, will you? I know the predominant color in Alaska is probably white, but paint us a picture of what's going to be happening on the 15th. I mean, does Alaska have a place that you can have a summit?
Alaska, Alaska
what
is
about
actually
security?
Yeah, Alaska is actually gorgeous in the summer. As a matter of fact, it's just a spectacular countryside. But I've been there one time on business, and it's just gorgeous. But yeah, there's plenty of places to have it, of course, and part of the sparsity is what makes it an appealing site because it's easier to secure. And obviously, it's Russia and the United States are close at certain points, just across I think the Bering Straits is what it is in between the two countries. Mm-hmm. So in terms of that goes, yeah, it's logistically, it's still going to be hard because you're talking about throwing this whole thing together in a week, and that's really hard when you're talking about two of the biggest heads of state on the planet, two of the biggest nuclear superpowers. So it's going to be some logistics challenges, but all those things can be worked out. The real issue is going to be, what happens on the ground between the two. And like I said, I think that most of the cards are in Putin's hands, so we'll see how that works out.
Do you think it'll be a one-day thing, or is there somewhere there? I presume there's hotels there. Forgive my ignorance, but how can you accommodate two such high-value targets in a place like Alaska if the thing stretches into a second day, maybe even a third day?
Yeah, we've actually had big summits there before. We hosted a Chinese delegation at the beginning of the Biden administration in Anchorage, Alaska, and it lasted, I think, a bit of time. So it's definitely doable. But the real issue is in terms of time. This is unusual in that ordinarily when you have heads of state to get together, especially in a conflict, their staffs have already worked out nearly everything, and the heads of state are just going to do the final, nuances. But here, virtually nothing's been agreed to. Just one meeting with Steve Witkoff prior to this, and now there's no time in between, and most of the actions is just the logistics getting together. So I doubt this will go more than a day and maybe even just a few hours, and unless some kind of big breakthrough is made. But my gut tells me that the Russian side is primarily going to say, hey, here's what we'll agree to, and we're willing to do this, but if you don't agree to this, then we're just going to keep fighting. So that wouldn't take a lot of time. The longer it goes, the better news, because that means that there's something to actually negotiate and talk about. But if it's short, it's not going to be good for our side.
You don't think that a deal has probably already been, initialed, and that they're meeting merely to sign it? I take your point. The Witkoff meeting was only a few days ago, and it was only 3 hours, so I don't know how they would have done it, except by email, secure email, I hope. But it's not normal for two superpowers to meet without knowing what the outcome is going to be, and it's just a bit unpredictable, that, isn't it?
I agree entirely. That, in fact, I think Trump, my gut tells me that he thinks that his force of personality is going to sway Putin to do something that Trump wants him to do, that's maybe against some of his Putin's self-interest. You have Trump saying that he ended 6 wars, and he had Armenia and Azerbaijan the other day. So I think that he believes that he can get things done that nobody else can. He kind of bragged on himself about the Armenia and Azerbaijan. So regardless of what anybody else thinks, he thinks that he brought that together, and I think he's bringing that same mentality into here. And this is not the same situation, so I hope he doesn't think that. Likewise, on the other side, I think that Putin is coming in knowing that he's got the leverage and that he can say, hey, I'm willing to be your friend, and I like to have good relations, but these are my red line, my no-pin red lines. We're not going to move from this, and he doesn't have to. So it can be a short or a long negotiation, but if it doesn't end up where Putin wants, he has the leverage to just walk away. But see, I think I think Trump's taking a much bigger risk here, because if Trump comes away, brings Putin onto American territory, and then either gets Putin to agree to something that Zelensky won't agree to, that the European Union won't agree to, then there's no deal because Trump walks off looking like he's powerless against our own side. And if he doesn't agree to this, then he comes off looking powerless against Putin. And Putin comes away saying, no, we haven't given up on any of these points here. So Trump is taking some big risks. But Putin, I think, he can come out win no matter how it goes, because he can say, hey, I tried to have peace and negotiations, but nobody was willing to give in on anything. The only path they left me was war. Or if he gets the negotiation, he comes off looking good, that he got something for the Russian side in the negotiating table. So I think it's an easier play for Putin and a much bigger risk for Donald Trump.
Finally, Colonel, how is it playing in Peoria? What's American public opinion saying about this summit?
Well, it's exactly what you would expect. The Republicans are saying, he's a great American. He's a great negotiator. He can make deals happen where nobody else could. You had Lindsey Graham on American television this morning saying, yeah, I think it's a great idea that he's going to, get Putin to swap some territories. I think that's wonderful, even though Lindsey Graham himself said that was a terrible idea earlier in the war. But he's all behind because he's a golfing buddy of President Trump. And so most of the Republicans are falling in line. And, of course, you have, just like that piece in the Telegraph I referenced earlier, you have a lot of the Democrats are saying, you're betraying Ukraine, you're just giving things away, you're just handing on a silver platter over to Russia, etc. So, I mean, it's just the narrative. It's not really based on reality.
Russia, Russia, Russia. Colonel Davis, thank you very much indeed for joining us again on the mother of all talk shows. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis, host of the unmissable, actually, Daniel Davis Deep Dive.